And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Put your thumbs up and say it's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, Tickety Boo, everything's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, son. Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
How many of you feel like you're not where you should be in life right now? Expectations, whether about career, relationships or success, can leave us feeling like we've fallen short. But whose expectations are we really living up to? In today's episode of Tickety Boo, we'll dive into where our expectations come from, how they impact our sense of self, and more importantly, how we can break free and start loving our lives again. So, here we are with the new format. We're in the studio. We are now on video. And we're going to start by kicking off with this new idea that we came up collectively of what's on our minds, taken from things we read about, see in the media, experience in the therapy room with our clients, things that our family and our friends are going through. And for today's episode, I wanted to kick off with expectations. The expectations that we place upon ourselves, the expectations that others place on us, and to really connect with people who may feel like at the moment they're not where they should be in life. So, what do you think? Expectations? Got anything you want to say about it?
I think it's a great subject.
Right.
Yeah, it's something that I very much place ridiculous expectations on myself and then constantly sort of living in a state of disappointment because I've never quite lived up to these unrealistic goals that I set for myself. So yeah, I think it's a great subject, and I think that's got to be at the core of a lot of people's issues, why they're so hard on themselves.
I'm curious because when I think of like these expectations, and to hear you say this, like I perceive you as being like really successful, and I can't see that you don't feel that there's all these expectations that you're not meeting. We were talking a little bit before we started recording the show. So I think it's that expectations and where we think we need to be successful and how others perceive us. And is it our expectations, our parents' expectations? Like, where did these expectations come from to achieve or be at a certain level, whatever that is?
For me, it's often timescale, just generally being too hard on myself, expecting other people to be an extension of myself, expecting them to do what I would do in the way that I would do it. I don't know whether that's trying to give sort of external validity to what I do and how I do it, but really it's probably about holding on a bit too tight and too much control and just expecting things too fast, I suppose.
Well, I think the problem is we're born with an unconscious script. We're expected to go to school, get a good education, get a good job, get married, have kids, buy a house, build something. But where did that expectation come from? Because that's not always our expectation, is it? Yeah, you know, you're probably going to meet a partner. You're probably going to buy a home. But sometimes, do you not feel that we unconsciously conform to what the outside world will see as, oh, they're doing it right? We're doing what we believe the world thinks we should be doing, rather than, why am I doing this? Is this right for me? Is that kind of...
Yeah, that's really interesting because as you were saying all that, I didn't have any of those, what I would call traditional expectations for myself. So I never had that. I haven't done anything the traditional way, like including leaving school early, going to university later in life, traveling. Like I didn't have that typical expectation. In fact, I didn't want to do any of that. But I think the expectations that I have put on myself have been far more detrimental to my own mental health. For example, when I became a mum, I had a brilliant pregnancy, everything was amazing, and I expected so much of myself. I read all the books, I had this whole plan of what I was going to do, and the birth didn't go as planned. And then obviously, when I look back, I got postnatal depression, and it wasn't any one thing. My expectations of where I should be were like unobtainable. And I'm really sure that that's where I contributed to my expectations of what it is to be a mum, of what it is to be a good mum, to do it right. And it wasn't necessarily about other people's expectations, but it was certainly around what I chose to read and listen to that made me think that I was already failing because I wasn't up here.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think we've probably all made decisions in our life around various things because we felt as though it's expected of us. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. The weight of expectation for me is probably more about what I think other people are expecting of me.
Yeah.
It's my expectation of their expectation.
Yes.
It actually really adds a lot of weight to me. And I don't know why, but I feel really quite stressed, like even with peace of mind.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're the absolute oracle at what we do, or you know. So, and because you do what you do so well, I feel there's an expectation on me to do it in a similar way. So, for me, breaking away and finding ways to do it in my own way, to put my own signature on it, that's great. At no point have you ever pushed those expectations on me. But for me, it's kind of a self-imposed expectation that I'm expecting that you might have.
Yeah.
That's just an example.
I think it's like that, though, with anything we do in life, isn't it? It's, you know, whether it's taking up a hobby or, you know, you want to change your life in some kind of way or start a business or whatever it may be, you immediately set an expectation. So let's strip it back to something we probably all know outside of business, relationships. You know, you meet somebody and you go, right, that's it. We're going to be together forever. We're going to get married. We're going to have experiences and we're going to grow old together. And that's the story. So there's an expectation of that's going to last forever. That is me now. Now that can happen. And I don't think it's unreasonable to expect to go into a relationship going, well, you know, I want this to be the forever thing. But the problem is when you get so bought into that expectation, you ignore the things that might actually go, this is not the path that's right for you. Or, you know, there's things that you are glazing over because you're conforming to the expectation that this will last forever. Yeah. And I think that's where misery can kind of creep in. I see so many people in therapy room that say to me, I can't get divorced because there's an expectation from my family that we will stay together regardless and we will work through our issues. And I think at some kind of level, the expectation that you try is perfect. It's the problem is that expectation makes me feel like I have no choice but to stay in the current situation that I'm in. I'm trapped by those expectations and the feelings are really strong that keep drawing me in. That's where I think people can head down a bit of, I don't know what the word is, but you find yourself on a path where your sense of self has gone. Well,
you lose yourself in that, you sacrifice yourself for others' expectations.
Yeah.
I was just thinking around the relationship because I know part of the reason that my marriage fell apart was there was two of us in it, obviously, and it was the unexpressed expectations we both had of the other, which we hadn't talked about. Or, you know, you start dating, you know, and then you get married. There's a lot of things people don't talk about. Or you just expect that the other person will know that this is how you've done it, this is what you've grown up with, or this is what you've grown up with, so you don't want that. And I think when it's that not expressing it until it's too late.
Mm-hmm. I think when life doesn't fit the prediction, then you become lost.
Yeah,
you lose your ability to change, and life is an ever-adapting thing.
Yeah,
and that's where I impose my own expectations. I always change, I move on, and I have an expectation that I will be able to carry that same momentum that I did earlier in my life, which I just haven't got that energy anymore. I don't feel the need to be working 24/7 or giving parts of myself away just to sort of comply or be, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and when you lose that ability to change and find the right direction for you. Yeah, because you're trying to live to somebody else's expectation within somebody else's boundaries, I suppose.
Yes, it's like we need to constantly audit our expectations and actually sit down and go, what am I doing here? You know, I did it with one of my businesses, you know, in the events world with my events business. Initially, I set that up because it's something that I enjoyed doing and I could turn it into a business. So my expectation was, I'm going to continue to enjoy doing this. And if I get paid for doing it, that is a bonus. But the problem is, the expectation of you'll continue to enjoy this is not the reality, because you're not always going to enjoy it. And as I've got older and a bit grumpier and a bit tireder, my expectation shifted from I'm doing something and I want to earn money and get paid for doing that. But that was out of line of my expectation of I'm going to enjoy this. So my expectations became conflicted. Yeah. And you're like, why am I doing this? I'm not enjoying it anymore. Or, you know, there's certain things about it I'm not enjoying. So it's that ability to go, actually, the expectation when I first started doing this was this, but that's now shifted and it's evolved. But we don't recognise that, so we keep doing the thing on eat, sleep or repeat on a loop. And I think that's where, you know, I kind of said to myself at that point in time, well, I can't stop doing it because everybody's going to think I'm a failure because I've stopped doing that. There's an expectation, you've got that, keep doing it.
Particularly when it's successful and you're doing well and everybody sees you doing all the things and going across the country, doing the events. I've seen some of your work as well. It's amazing.
Yeah, but people look from the outside and go, oh, that looks amazing. The amount of people that have said to me, you must be a millionaire. And I'm like, what makes you think that? Well, you know, you've seen on social media at this event, you were talking to that celebrity, you were doing this, you were doing that. And I was like, I can understand how you came to that picture, but let me assure you the reality is far from it. But I think where I've made the mistake in the past with expectations is I need to keep doing that so I keep their view in their mind of I'm doing the right thing. So you actually lose why you're doing it in the first place, and that's where it becomes muddled.
But again, just from a business point of view, you're always going to be customer focused on what your customers think and your customers' expectations, and managing those are. Yeah, that you know, that's
customers expect to see that you are doing great things, so they can look at it and go, "We're dealing with the right person here." But yeah, I mean that's just a little insight to it. But when I started Peace of Mind, I had zero expectations, none. I just was very interested in helping other people that either had or were going through the same struggles I was at that point in life. I had no expectations of it turning into a business, into a brand, into a podcast, into me teaching therapists. Zero. I just went with the process and see where it went. And I think for me, organically, that worked better because I removed all of that pressure to make it a success.
Yeah, I love that. And for you, because I've known you through this and prior to you establishing this business, it's really interesting because that's when we release the expectations of what society has told us to do. Because I found that like almost all the women I work with, they come to me, there's a certain way they think they need to live their life or have their business or whatever it is. And it's like, it's getting them back to, okay, who were you before you were told that this is how to be? Who, you know, we see it in families where everybody becomes a doctor, everybody becomes a lawyer. And it's not just about business. I've got one of my clients who she's had her first art show in London, and that's what she's passionate about. And she wasn't able to do that prior to. It's when we release those expectations of what's holding us back, trying to conform. And I think part of the reason that my people like working with me is because I haven't conformed. So they're like, oh my gosh, I want a little bit of that magic medicine, whatever it is you're doing. And it's being around people who give us permission to go, to break the mold, to not have to live up to somebody else's expectations, including our own, because as you've shared, you've had your own expectations of what to live up to. And when we give ourselves permission, when we give each other permission, what is that thing you want to do? And for you, establishing this company, and you had no expectations around it. Mind you, I will say, when we were doing our training together all those years ago, I knew you'd be really good at it.
Yeah, but I think the mistake that people make is we become hostages to our future.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And at what point does our planning and our expectations become unhealthy?
Yeah, but how do we break free from the expectations? Because it's very easy for us to recognise what we're doing. And, I've just said, don't become a hostage of the future in order to keep yourself and others around you happy. How do we then go, I'm going to break free from the expectations?
Courage, face your fears, and being with people who will encourage you to do the thing, will inspire you, who kind of aren't going to shoot you down and say, oh my gosh, the likes of us don't do that, or who do you think you are? Like, people who believe in you, who can, and having the courage and going, if I don't change something and I'm still doing this in 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, like, what's my life going to be like? Nothing's going to change. And I think they have to be willing to change. It takes courage to break that trajectory.
So start to be kinder to yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe just setting more realistic expectations, because in a way, expectations is a bit like goal setting and holding yourself accountable. So instead of saying, I'm going to lose 10 stone this week, just make it reasonable. I'm going to, instead of saying I'm going to lose it this week, say my goal is to lose it over the next 12 months, but at a healthy rate each week of X. So if we was to keep our expectations realistic, it would save that constant disappointment that we have in ourselves when we can't live up to those unrealistic.
So don't become so blinded and focused on the outcome. Just be involved in the process of doing, and when you're focused on the process of doing, you're able to adapt and amend and review what you're doing. But if you're just like, I need to get, it's a bit like running a marathon, isn't it? You've got 26 miles to go and you're just like, I need to get to the 26 mile mark. And that's all your mind is focused on. It seems so far away. I don't think I can reach it. What if I can't do it? And you're like, no, let's just get to that tree at the bottom of the road. And then when we get to that tree, we'll aim for the next tree. And you stay in that micro step process. And 26 miles suddenly gets broken down into a much easier journey. And
also because there's so much doing, if we're going to that far off goal, like it's a doing, it's like we're busy being busy to get there. Something that I find really powerful is when we refocus on what do we want our life to look like? How do we want to feel? So it becomes more about being and being present in your life. So what are the steps I can take today, tomorrow? So make it those micro manageable steps. So that it's about embodying how we want to be rather than trying to fulfill that goal, that destination, that fulfillment, that obligation. How do you want to be? How do you want to wake up? What do you want your life to look like? And then kind of working out what supports that. I mean, as we all know, my brother died by suicide this year. And it's like, life is too freaking short. Like, do the thing now and do it with passion. Like, there may not be a tomorrow. So, like, what is it we can do today? How do we want to be? What do we want our environment to be? And our environment isn't just like the external, it's the internal. Yeah. And I know that we've all done the work internally, and that's the big game shifter, being kind to ourselves. And also when we're kind and compassionate to ourselves and we start to build the dream, create the passion, do the hobby, whatever it is we want to do, we impact those around us. Like, if we have children, they get to see, oh, like, this is what being happy is, or this is what being in a healthy relationship is, or this is what getting out of an unhealthy relationship is. But
the expectations, in most cases, are actually just robbing us of happiness, aren't they?
Yes.
One of the things I see in the therapy room when I'm working with people is, I get somebody that comes from a family of very successful people, whether, mum and dad are teachers, or, they're doctors, or they're very successful in business. It's almost unconsciously decided that's the path that that person's going to walk. And maybe they're not like that. Maybe they want to go and do something very different in life, but they feel uncomfortable going in a different direction to where their whole sort of family unit has gone. One client really sticks out in my mind in that incredibly intelligent, was always branded as the smart kid at school. So the mum was always walking around going, she's brilliant. She's the best at everything she does. She's going to be absolutely fantastic in life. And the pressure that put on her to keep conforming to those expectations that were set by her parents actually led to misery. At college and university, which is a much bigger environment than being at school, the expectation to be the best suddenly was not achievable. There were much smarter kids. There were people there that were just naturally incredibly smart. And as soon as she couldn't be the best and wasn't the top of the class and didn't get straight A's and dissertations and stuff, she felt like she wasn't meeting the expectations placed on her by her parents, and she left. She just walked away from it. And that pattern kept repeating throughout her life. And that caused more misery. And it wasn't her expectation, but she was conforming to it. So it was robbing her of all this happiness. But I think one of the things I would really like to talk about is this. It's when life gives you a setback. You know, something doesn't go to plan, losing a sibling, losing a job, relationship coming to an end, having to move or whatever it may be. When you get a setback and that kind of rips your expectations apart, how do you come back?
I love this question. For me, it's about reflecting back, knowing that this isn't going to kill you. Like, for starters, we've survived worse, we've survived harder, like, we're going to get through this. So looking at what we have accomplished, starting to be grateful for what we do have, what we've accomplished, because I think so often we lose sight of what we've been, like, the other challenges we've been through, and looking at those. So it's like the story of our lives. We make decisions based on that. And we can reframe, because this is how we build resilience. And this is like, we hear it all the time. It's like, oh, they're so resilient, they power through, they rise from the ashes. But that's a learned behavior. Mm-hmm. It's like, instead of going down the pit of depression, which has been one of my battles, it's like, right, okay, what can I do today to support myself? What am I grateful for? Gratitude is freaking amazing. And there's research to say that for every negative, we're just talking little negatives at this point, it takes 3 positive actions to make up for that. So let's say we do a gratitude, or 5 or 11, like, it depends on the severity of it. So if we start building that muscle up of being grateful, of acknowledging our accomplishments, what we're working towards, the community that we're in, the connections, we're building that resilience muscle. So next time it happens, or because challenges are going to come, like, we can't avoid them, we get better able to cope each and every time. So it's a learned pattern and behavior. So it's just as we can learn unhealthy patterns and behaviors, we can start to learn healthier patterns of behavior. Like, let's say it's a pattern interrupt.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, in my mind, I'm going through scenarios in my life where I've conformed to expectations and they've not always had good outcomes. Can you guys think of times in your life where you've definitely conformed to an expectation and it could have turned out to be a success? If you've got one that was a success, fantastic. But can you think of a time where you've met an expectation and it's led you to a place of feeling miserable?
Personally, I've been quite lucky. It's always with friendship groups. You always put into relation, and you automatically assume that people will respond back in the same way to you that you do to them. Yeah. So you can be feeling down, and as soon as you feel a friend is down, you pick the phone up and you say, "Is everything okay?" Uh-huh. And because you're always the one that seems to be there for everybody, sometimes when you're down and nothing comes back down, that's probably one of my biggest things, because I'm quite open and I give my time quite generously. Sometimes I put my expectation on other people, which isn't fair. This is
Yeah,
me, and
yeah.
I can't expect other people to be me, so it's totally unfair.
We've talked about this before, haven't we? Unconscious contracts. I'm there for you, so therefore I expect you to be there for me.
Yeah.
But I also expect you to recognise that I need you without me saying anything.
Yeah, but they've not read this contract that you've made with them in your head.
Yeah.
But that you get upset when they don't abide by the terms of this contract that they've never seen. So for me, a lot of things are personal. Obviously, you always get your family things and your personal. In business, I don't want to keep talking about business.
No.
But yeah, there's always lots of those things.
Well,
but that's more.
We can relate
annoying
it to, you expect your boss to be nice to you, to not ask you to stay behind. You expect your partner to not throw their clothes on the floor or put the dishes away. You expect the kids to do what you ask them to do and, not cause you problems. It's when our expectations are not met, we lead to misery. But unconsciously we say to us, as long as my expectations are surpassed, I'll then be happy.
But the other issue with my expectations and other people that I know, people that I've had through the therapy room, they concentrate so hard on their expectations, they start to then be unkind to themselves because their focus then becomes off their own well-being and their determination to stick by this expectation that they've got of themselves. They actually stop being kind to themselves, which then...
It's really interesting because I was struggling in this moment to think about when has this happened, like when has an expectation been challenging or the outcome not being positive or whatever. And it was in your share, I realised the version of me from, let's say, 15 years ago or 20 years ago would have reacted very differently to, let's say, the friendship group or those expectations not being met. It's all the work I've done now, and it's why I love the therapy work that we do here at Peace of Mind, which is why we have this podcast, is building these tools so we become resilient and happy with ourselves, how things are, where we no longer then expect, like we show up and let's say we show up and we're kind and we're generous because that's what we want to do. So it's not to get something in return, it's not transactional. But the version of me 20 years ago would have felt very different. So as much as like I can't think of something where that's been challenging, I want to say we can all get to this point because actually we do the work. You come to somebody at Peace of Mind or you reach out to someone who can help you. Like you build these muscles so that then you go, oh yeah, I can't think of a time where that didn't work because I see anything that's gone wrong or any time there's been upset and hurt. I find a lesson in it, much to my son's dismay. I remember when he was a teenager, you know what teenagers are like, say, why do you make everything a lesson? But it's because that's how I
everything
think.
is a lesson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of course it is.
There is a lesson.
Not when you're 13. When you're 13, it's annoying.
You know it all, don't you?
And I think it's really interesting to show that, yes, as we all sit here and we go, yeah, this is what you can do, and it can sound like someone could be listening. It's like, gosh, you don't understand where I'm at. And it's like, well, actually, yes, we've all been there at some point. And we know what's possible, and we know, like, if you can let go of those expectations, work on yourself, start following your passion, like all these, it's all building blocks to having this inner happiness, to being more peaceful in our environment, and it's obtainable for everybody.
Yeah, I think we all actually have expectations that we don't even realise we have. We have unconscious expectations. You know, I never want to make this podcast political, far from it. But we must admit, we are living in a world at the moment that's got quite a funk in the feeling around what's going on globally. We expect our politicians to be honest and straight down the line and have our best intentions at heart. We have expectations that if I go to work and I work hard, I should be able to afford to come home, fill my cupboard with food, heat my house and have a holiday once or twice a year with my family. They're not unreasonable expectations. However, sometimes certain external factors way out of your control don't align with your expectations and you end up feeling resentment, anger, fear, whatever they may be. You know, we expect energy companies to charge us a reasonable rate to heat our homes, and whether you think that's the reality or not is a different matter, but you expect to be able to afford to pay your mortgage, or you expect to be able to buy enough food for your family to eat for the month. And there's a lot of people that may be listening to this going, there's so many things that I expected, not took for granted. You know, I'm not afraid of work and I'm not afraid of putting myself out there. But my expectation was the outside would be fair and give me a level playing field.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
To go at. And now I'm full of resentment, anger, fear, overwhelm, whatever it may be. And we recently had an episode about burnout, where people are working even harder, stressing even more to keep meeting the expectations of what their life should look like, because they've expected external factors to play in a certain way. And I think that's where we rob ourselves of happiness.
Well, in that respect, a lot of people have had a lifestyle for so long, and it's actually winding backwards. And as they're developing in their career and they're moving forward, their actual lifestyle is going backwards.
Yeah.
So, of course, you know, they expect to be treading water at minimum, let alone going backwards. So that expectation, who wouldn't be resentful at that?
You
really
mentioned it
tough.
on a previous episode of surviving is the new thriving.
Yes.
But I think the other thing is as well is that ability to take stock of your expectations, to actually sit down and go, whether it's your relationship, your work, your finances, whatever it is that you're doing, have I ever actually stopped and gone, what was I expecting this to lead to? How was I expecting this to make me feel? Because a lot of our expectations actually can lead us down a path of misery. And what I mean by that is I expect my partner to make me happy. I expect my job to pay me a fair wage. Yeah. I expect my kids to behave so I can be okay. And you're looking for that external to do like you said, you know, it's an inside job. It's not an outside job. If you're looking for your partner to make you happy all the time, that's not their job.
Yeah.
Yep. Great.
That's your job. And I'm sure that's something we'll talk about as we move forward in other episodes. But it is this ability to, you know, that's why I asked the question, have you ever reached that point in life where you've committed to something, you've decided to do something, and your expectation was not what you thought it was when you got there? Because I can tell you, I was speaking to somebody the other week, this one blew me away. Somebody set up a business with the expectation to become rich so they could become happy. They said, when I'm rich, I will be happy. Now, this person was sitting in the therapy room with me and they were telling me this story. And I'm going to take it so far to the extreme now, it's almost crazy, but this is the reality. They'd recently sold shares in their business, and they still owned the controlling share. Yeah. They had sold some of their shares for £80 million, right? £80 million. And they still own the controlling share of the business, so they're worth a lot of money. And they went, I've got all this money in the bank, I've set all the family up in houses, I've sorted everybody out, we've got this amazing lifestyle, and I'm absolutely miserable. I'm more miserable than I've ever been in my life. And I went, why? And he goes, because I honestly believe when I was rich, I'll be happy.
Yeah. And it just goes to show it's about being happy now, not when. So it's not that you're settling or it's trying to find satisfaction and be content with what you have, finding peace with what you have, being happy now, because that is something nobody can change how we're feeling on the inside except ourselves. So when we are showing up like we're happy, like I'm happier and more peaceful and more content than I've ever been, but I've just experienced 8 deaths in 8 months, including 2 suicides, and one is my brother. And I've had people say, oh my gosh, like, how have you gone through this? It's like, because I've been doing the work prior to, which is why, like, start doing the inner work now, work on yourself, be happy with yourself now, and not in an artificial fake way, you know, not painting on like, oh, I'm happy and smile. It's like, no, like sometimes we have crappy days and that's okay, but it's how we are on the inside. And people come through such extreme situations, like even more than what I've been through. Like I'm not going to name some of these situations, and still they rise, and still they're good, and still they're happy because they're happy with themselves. And if we can do do that. I mean, that's why there's a huge drive, I think, particularly since 2020, where people were looking for that happiness, the fulfillment. I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel content. Because actually everything was stripped away for us for a while. And it was like, oh, actually, I'm not satisfied within myself. And I think this is really where the big driver is, when people realize it's not about the other things making us happy. It's about us making us happy. It's about us finding fulfillment now. It's about working on ourselves and letting go of those expectations. And I know for some people listening, it's going to be like, well, you don't know what I'm going through. And I was like, yes, I get it. But we've all seen people in the therapy room, and in my business, I see people who, as soon as they start working on themselves, oh my gosh, like the things they do, they're happier with the stuff that they achieve then. They find contentment, and it isn't about doing a thing, it's about being, and being within themselves.
So happiness doesn't come from achieving all your goals. No. It actually comes from enjoying what you can in the moment whilst moving forwards.
Yeah. Happiness is an inside job.
Yeah. So the expectation, like I said earlier, it's not the outcome, it's the process.
Yeah. It's the journey.
It's the journey, definitely. Yeah. And having the ability to divert, pivot, which we're going to talk about, shift your expectations. So I started this and I expected it to be like this, but actually I'm not enjoying it, or it's not for me. I'm now going to move in this direction. That allows you to be happy at what you're doing at the moment. Like I said, with peace of mind, and I had zero expectations when I started doing it, and I've enjoyed it more than anything else I've done in my life, because I removed all the external pressure.
Yeah.
Just took it all away. It's like, if it falls on, that's why for so long I didn't go on social media. When you were saying you need to get on social media, I was like, well, no, because once I put it out there, I feel as though I need to keep conforming. I'm actually enjoying this, the private success for me that was working for me. But I think, but I was so obsessed on learning and staying in the processing, enjoying it, that the journey became successful as part of that.
And then look, I shared with you both today that one of my clients sent me a message that she listened to our show on anxiety, and she's so grateful that we're doing this, and she hadn't heard of the podcast until I came and joined. She's re-listened to that episode 4 times, and she finds more nuggets of wisdom each time. And she's like, I shared the message with you before we came on to record, and it's like, she is so grateful that we're doing this. So by being out there, by putting ourselves, by you letting go of that and embracing and letting people know, we get to impact people.
Yeah, so I think probably, like, for the listeners of this episode, is maybe pausing for a moment and going, what expectation am I holding on to that no longer serves me? What do I need to let go of? Now, that can be quite scary, can't it? Yeah. To think of letting go of something, because I think with expectations or shifting expectations, except there's going to be a bit of discomfort, because as you head into the unfamiliar, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing.
And I think with that as well, and I know it'll come up again and again, for me, it's also, if I don't let that go, what will change? If I don't do that, like, it's because, you can choose to stay doing exactly what you're doing or letting go of that expectations. But if you don't change anything, what's going to change? And is this how you want it to be?
Definition of madness.
Yeah.
Keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect it to come out differently. I think, that asking yourself what expectations you're holding on to, what are you struggling to let go of to move forwards is
why?
Why
are you struggling to let go of them?
Why are you struggling to let go of it? Why do you keep doing the thing? Why do you stay in this situation?
How do I let go of them?
How do I let go?
Because that's not easy for people.
No, that sometimes is where, you do end up in the therapy room, or you end up speaking to friends and others that maybe have been through that to help you move forwards. But movement involves action. It involves stepping into unfamiliar feelings. However, when you do move through that, you could change your life. You could literally today decide, today is the day that I drop these expectations and I allow myself to change and move forwards in life.
It's a lot of self-reflection.
It's a good chat, that. Yeah. Really enjoyed it. So listeners, expectations, if you're holding on to any, we want to hear about it. If you took any nuggets from this episode, let us know, drop us an email, drop us a comment. And the other thing is as well, if you could give us a like or a subscribe. We know loads of you listen to the podcast, but actually by subscribing, liking and commenting, it really helps us keep having conversations like this, and the platforms reward us by sharing our content with more people that may need to hear it. So that concludes this episode. Thanks very much for listening.
If you or someone close to you needs to access mental health support, please contact your GP, or if it's out with normal office hours, get in touch with NHS 24 on 111. Alternatively, contact the Samaritans on 116 123. All calls are free of charge from any phone. You can also find more support information on the Tickety Boo website, ticketyboopodcast.co.uk.